Welcome to Trinity Church of Austin. I am Sid Hall, Trinity's lead minister. Because of the coronavirus emergency, we are streaming our services over the internet rather than holding in-person worship. We are taking the pandemic seriously, and we continue to follow the guidelines of the United Methodist Church, the United Church of Christ, as well as the CDC, and we are closing our doors to gatherings for the foreseeable future. Phone numbers for texting prayer requests, a downloadable order of worship, email address for Pastoral Care, and introductions for supporting Trinity are in the description of the YouTube video, and much of this information will also appear on the screen. Many of us are at home and are yearning for connections to sustain us. In days of old, and sometimes even now, letter writing was a way of staying connected when we were apart from those we love. Today, we continue the Easter season series called I Want to Write You a Letter. We are exploring the Apostle Paul's letters, and on some weeks, we will pair them with famous letters or statements from the modern era. The message today is entitled, Keeping the Main Thing, the Main Thing. At the end of our welcome time, we will light a candle to begin our worship and to create a sacred space together. We will do this every week in our online worship. If you have a candle at home and you'd like to light it with us, please feel free to do so. Please know that whether we're meeting face to face or over live streaming, at Trinity we believe that no matter who you are, who you love, what you believe or don't believe, you are welcome. Welcome, friends, to the celebration.
Hi everyone, for those of y'all who do not know me, my name is Erika or Erica. I work in the children's ministry, so I'm usually running around in the back. I miss all the children so much. I hope y'all are doing well. But today I kind of just wanted to talk about the importance of writing. I know Sylvia in the last video or in a video mentioned that she's been writing to her friends and family and she's been sending them postcards. I think writing a letter to someone is super important. It's super personal, and I think it's just like a different way of communicating that we don't normally do and that I think we should do more of. Writing a letter is super personal. And it can just really show how much you love a person. But also you can write a letter to yourself. You can write a letter to yourself for when we get out of this quarantine, or you can write a letter to yourself 5 years from now. Or you can even draw something. It doesn't have to be words on paper. I think also drawing something for someone else or for yourself is super important in this time. And so I hope that after service, you'll take a few moments to write to someone or draw something for someone. They can live close to you or they can live far away. But just make it personal and just have fun with it. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope to see everyone soon. Bye.
Hi, I'm Tim Brace, Director of Music at Trinity Church of Austin. Today, I'd like to lead you in a short meditation from the Kundalini yoga tradition in India, a tradition that goes back thousands of years. This meditation is known as Kirtan Kriya. Kirtan means song, and Kriya indicates an activity within this tradition. Research has strongly suggested that doing this meditation for 10 minutes a day can significantly reduce stress and increase activity in areas of the brain that are central to memory. So those of us of a certain age might want to pay attention. There is a chant that's part of this meditation. The syllables are sa, ta, na, and ma. Sa, ta, na, ma. As you sing, you touch your fingers to your thumbs like this. Sa, ta, na, ma. Sa, ta, na, ma. So sa is index finger, then ta, middle finger, na, ring finger, ma, little finger. As I said, normally you would do this Kriya for about 10 minutes. We'll do a very short version today, but I will lead you through the entire structure of the exercise so you can then do it at home if you remember to. So take a deep breath. Relax. Relax your body. Relax your shoulders. Get your hands ready. You can close your eyes if you like. And go with me. Satanama, 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 Satanama. I can't hear you. Satanama, 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 Satanama. Now whisper. Satanama, 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 Satanama. Now continue silently. Just think the syllables as you continue with your fingers. Back to a whisper. Satanama, 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 Satanama. Back to singing. Satanama, 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 Satanama. One more time. Satanama. Take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders, relax your face. Open your eyes. Each of those sections we would normally do for a couple of minutes. And the middle one, the silent one, maybe for 4 minutes, and that would altogether be about 12 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. I'm Mark Moore. I'm the Associate Minister at Trinity. During this time of our prayers, we receive dozens of prayer texts, and we'd ask you to please keep those prayers to one line, a brief prayer, if you will. And if we don't get time for your prayer during this time, please feel free to type your prayer into the YouTube chat box. And know that we record all our prayers and review them together as a staff. I invite you now into a time and attitude of prayer. Are there prayers now that you would offer for our lives and our community? Please text your brief prayers to 512-766-3123. That's 512-766-3123. Please pray for the Cobbs and Gill families who tragically lost two young sons in an ATV accident yesterday evening in Tyler. And we please also pray for Steve Larson, our friend, who is having surgery on Tuesday. And for Marge Philbrook. Please pray for her as she is in the process of dying, and pray for the Henrys, next door neighbors, Gus and Natalie, and their children, and Natalie's father, Tom, as they are confronting coronavirus. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. Please pray for George and Wanda Holcomb in George's journey with cancer. And for Mark and Carol, prayers for Gwen as she goes through residential treatment for her eating disorder. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. For Kirk and Heather in New York. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. God, we thank you for this world, and thank you for all the food from Gabriel. Joyful and healing spirit, receive our prayers. Let us hold these prayers and those cradled in the silence of our hearts in a moment of silence. Please now hear this prayer, the COVID poem by Laura Kelly Fanucci. When this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake from a stranger, full shelves at the store, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of communion, a routine checkup, the school rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be, we were called to be, we hoped to be, and may we stay that way, better for each other because of the worst. Amen.
For our song of reflection, let us sing together the song Out Beyond Ideas by David Wilcox, set to the poetry of the great Sufi poet Rumi. Carol Lewis is going to lead us in a body prayer for the chorus of the song, which says, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." Please stand in body and or spirit as you are so moved.
Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about ideas and language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rush-Dugan. I have been a part of Trinity for 12 years. Trinity has meant community for myself and my family, with like-minded people who strive to make the world a better place through love, and I'm grateful for that. The reading I'm sharing with you today comes from Galatians, chapter 5, verses 13 through 16 and 22 through 25. For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If, however, you bite and devour one another, take care that you are not consumed by one another. Live by the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit.
Good morning, Trinity family. My name is Stephanie Molnar, and I have been a member of Trinity for about 15 years now. I came for the message of inclusion and stayed because of the community, so thank you all for being here this morning. I'd like to share with you the second reading, which are excerpts from Nelson Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, published in 1994. I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed towards the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lays defeat, and death. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can be taught to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others.
Most people like a good spring cleaning, and my grandmother was no exception to that. And especially for her, it was about preparing the yard, preparing the garden, preparing the flower beds. And she used to employ me, literally. She'd pay me sometimes to help her out, and it was hard work. We'd be out there on a Saturday all day long, starting early in the morning and finishing early in the evening. And she was prepared. She had lists and she had things to do. And I would often work on the yard and pulling weeds and trimming the hedges and this sort of thing. And Grandma kept most of her attention toward the flowers, planting new flowers and preparing the beds for them, but also pruning roses. And I remember specifically watching her prune her roses. And at first, when I was very young, it just seemed like she was ripping them apart, that there was no chance for them to survive. Why is she killing the flowers? And she trimmed them and she clipped them just the right way. And she'd take a lot of time really looking at it and clipping it. And sure enough, within a very short period of time, those rose bushes looked amazing. She knew how to grow and nurture flowers, and especially her roses. I thought about that this week as I was reading the Apostle Paul in Galatians, because he talked about our job in faith as being living by the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit specifically. This idea of fruit was similar to a gardener. This idea that there is a product that is put out, and you may not see it at first, but here's what it looks like. And for Paul, it was things like faithfulness, gentleness, patience, joy, peace, love, and kindness. This is what the fruit looked like. But there was a lot going on under that to create that. And for him, it was the work of the Spirit. Paul talked about a world that was at war. And not just the war of the Romans onto the citizens of Rome, and especially in those outlying areas like Galatia. Galatia, by the way, was modern-day Turkey. And it was a place settled by the Gauls, by the Celts, before the time of Christ. And by the time of Paul, there were significant settlements of Celtic people all along that area that we know now as Turkey. That was Galatia, the Romans' word for Turkey. And it was seen as a place of fear and concern, for the Celts held on to their strong beliefs and their strong sense of independence there. And so Paul had a particular kind of passion for these people. He had visited them. So unlike some of his letters, he knew the people of Galatia. But since Galatia was such a large area, his letter was more of a general letter, one to be read in public, that didn't get into the details of say hello to this person or that person like we see in some other letters. Because in Galatia, he's trying to appeal to a larger audience that may involve multiple communities. So here's Paul talking about the fruit of the Spirit. And what he does before we get to the passage that you just heard is talk about this cosmic battle between flesh and spirit. Now it's important we don't get too sidetracked by that. When we hear flesh, most of us, at least raised in the Christian tradition, think of sins of the flesh, the things that, particularly sexual immorality and those kinds of things. This is not what Paul was focused on. Paul saw flesh as the earthly container, that everything temporal, not just the body, but the earth itself. And while Paul would not have believed in what was later called original sin, he did believe that this earthly place was the fertile ground to sow that which could destroy, that which could hurt, that which could harm. And he knew that all too well in the way his communities often operated, and he knew it very well in the larger system of the world, in seeing how militarism and greed and war subjugated people, including the Celts in Galatia. And so Paul is talking about two different worlds here, two cosmic orders that are at work. The order of the temporal, which involves our bodies, but is not just our bodies, but is what it means to live on this planet. And while it's not saying that is evil, it is saying it is the ground through which evil can be born. And then there's this other thing going on, the world of the spirit. And he's not talking about your own spiritual self here. He's talking about this sense of presence of the divine that moves in and through this world and above this world and below this world. And that for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, they can tap into that spirit. Paul is calling the people in Galatia to not ignore the temporal, but to turn their eyes toward the celestial, to turn their eyes toward the spirit which is already with them. And when they walk in that spirit, when they live in that spirit, then life occurs the way it needs to, instead of leading to things that are broken and hurting and harmful. It leads to the things that he calls the fruit of the Spirit. And he believed that Jesus was the first fruit to instigate that, to really set that in motion. He even talks about a signal, a sign of living by the fruit of the Spirit, and not the self-indulgence of the flesh, is to love each other like a slave would love a master. Which is odd, because just before that in Galatians, he talks about the evils of slavery. So here he's using a metaphor that's a little iffy. He's kind of touching on some difficult ground. But what he means is that one must humble themselves. One must be willing to see the other as one to be served. And so he uses this radical, abrasive, really, metaphor of a slave. And then he follows it by saying that you must love your neighbor as yourself, echoing the words of Jesus and echoing the words of the Shema of the Israelites. And this is what it meant to live in the Spirit. So it's not that Jesus brought that in where it wasn't before, which is how it's talked about sometimes as Jews compare themselves to, or Christians compare themselves to Jews, but more as that those of us who are non-Jews, these Celts, these Galatians, these Gentiles, can live in this spirit of Israel without following the law, without being obedient to the law. In fact, the law itself can almost be a hindrance to you if you're a Gentile, because it's not your story. And so, but the story of the Spirit, which continues from the time of the ancient ancestors of Israel and on through through Pentecost and through the living church, that is the spirit to step into. It reminds me of a quote that comes from Nietzsche, actually, in his wonderful book on Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Nietzsche talks about how we are so drawn to solemnity and to the painful parts of this living, that sometimes that's how we frame everything, even our spirituality. And he has this marvelous quote that he says that, yes, I know life is hard to bear, but I should only believe in a God who would know how to dance. And when I saw my devil, and this is I think something that Paul could echo, I found him serious, thorough, profound, solemn. He was the spirit of gravity. Through him all things fall. Not by anger, but by laughter do we slay, Nietzsche says. And then he writes, now I am light, now do I fly, now do I see myself under myself. Now there dances a God in me. Paul understood the Spirit as that same kind of dance, a dance of freedom, that rather than tapping into what doesn't work, let's focus on what does work. And that is walking by the Spirit. You know, it's interesting that Paul actually uses a word that in his text that the translation that we just heard actually translates it as live. But I want to read it for you again. It says, live by the Spirit. But it literally says in the text, walk by the Spirit. And then he also says again at the very last of the passage, if we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. And that word in the Greek means not living, it's not bio, it is walking. It is walking by the Spirit. And that made me think of one of my favorite books of all time. Back in the mid-90s, when I was trying to understand what it meant to live into practicing faith in a way that took that faith to the streets, took it to action. I was looking for models, people that I could draw on to learn and how to do that and how to do it with integrity. And I came across Nelson Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, back in 1994. And I was stricken by how confessional Mandela was, and how he talked about how his struggle in prison was not how to be free in the sense of getting out of prison. He knew his fate, and he knew that nothing was going to change that, at least in the foreseeable future. What he began to realize at a certain point of time, something akin to what Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning, and that is that true freedom comes from an attitude from within. It is a walking into a different way of seeing the world, not focusing on what you can't do, not focusing on where you can't go, but focusing on where you can and pointing in that direction. Here's what he says. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to that despair. That way lays defeat and death. And then he goes on to say this, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Nelson Mandela realized at some point that what he would call death and despair, and that those dark moments, that's what Paul meant when he talked about the flesh. Not the sins of the flesh, but flesh in a broader sense of what Nietzsche might have called that place of gravity, that where all things fall. But instead, lifting himself to this place of dancing, to the place of spirit that hovers within and around and through. And that is the place that we walk. I think of the Hebrew word halakha, and it literally means it's a way of studying the scriptures, of movement through the scriptures and the traditions. But it literally comes from a Hebrew word that means to walk. And so there is this sense that when we tap into the Spirit, we are walking into something new altogether. Paul believed that if the Gentiles in Galatia were going to live the life that they needed to live, to understand the freedom of what it means to live by the Spirit, they could find fulfilling lives. And it wasn't that it was by doing, but doing was certainly a part of it. The fruit of that connection to Spirit is what led to things like love, joy, patience, kindness, etc. I think Nelson Mandela began to realize very quickly in his time of imprisonment that the people who were his jailers could prevent him from having any liberty, any kind of outside freedom, but that he, through his attitude, through his focus, recognizing from what was within and that spirit that was all-encompassing, that he could live in that, and that would define his freedom. But it wasn't enough for him to understand that was his own freedom, but it meant the freedom of all. That his own freedom needed to also enhance the freedom of others. And he goes on in the book to talk about how he realized that his mission was not just to free South Africa, but he could free even his jailers from guilt and from pain through relationship. Just a remarkable book, and I highly recommend it. It reminds me of what Michelle Obama calls, when they go low, we go high. She used that phrase as a way to handle bullies back in the 2016 election cycle. But recently she sat down with Oprah Winfrey, and Oprah Winfrey asked her to explain what she really means by going high. Is it just a fun meme? Was it a catchphrase for a campaign, or is it a real philosophy? And here's what Michelle Obama said: going low is easy, which is why people go to it. It's easy to go low. It's easy to lead by fear. It's easy to be divisive. It's easy to make people feel afraid. That's the easy thing, and it's also the short-term thing, she said. Then she goes on to say this: when I want to go low, it's all about my own ego. It's not about solving anything. It's about seeking revenge on the thing that happened to you. For me, she says, what I learned from my husband, what I learned from 8 years in the White House, this life, this world, our responsibility in it is so much bigger than us. Paul writes, "For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If, however, you bite and devour one another, take care that you are not consumed by one another. Walk by the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. And those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we walk by the Spirit, let us therefore be guided by the Spirit." Friends, nothing can be more poignant than for us in our own Galatia today. It's so easy, especially when we're quarantined or when we're stressed by working on the front lines, to see the whole world as going to hell in a handbasket. And it is. But there's another world, and that's the world of the Spirit that blows through all of us and blows through everything. And if we focus on that rather than the gravity of the pain that we're in, we can be freed by the Spirit to live and to reach out, and as Nietzsche says, even to dance with God. That is my goal. I've got a friend, Peter, who checks on us, his friends, every once in a while. And I don't always catch his calls right when he calls, so sometimes I call him back and then I get a message on his phone. But here's how he always, in his message, I just love what he says. Leave a message. I may be out hitching my wagon to a star. Hitching my wagon to a star. Folks, that's what it means to keep the main thing. The main thing. Paul understood that. Nelson Mandela understood that. Michelle Obama understands that. And my friend Peter. I pray that we can understand what it means to live, to walk in the Spirit today, especially in these hard times. Amen.
Our hymn today is "Traveling the Road to Freedom" by John Bell. Bell is a Church of Scotland minister and hymn writer. He is a member of the Iona community, an ecumenical Christian community on the Scottish island of Iona, of men and women from different walks of life and different traditions within Christianity. Bell also wrote "The Summons," another song of his that we often sing. Please stand in body and/or spirit, and let us sing together.
Traveling the road to freedom, who wants to travel the road with me? Fettered by noise and branches, and banners hanging from every tree. Cheered on by frenzied people, puzzled by what they hear and see. Traveling the road to freedom, who wants to travel the road with me? Traveling the road to freedom, who wants to travel the road with me? the dark will turn and flee. Nourished by faith and patience, neither of which is plain to see. Traveling the road to freedom, who wants to travel the road with me? Traveling the road to freedom, who wants to travel the road with me? Tipping the scales of justice, setting both minds and captives free. Suffering and yet forgiving, even when my friends most disagree. Traveling the road to freedom, who wants to travel the road with me?
Now's the time we bring forth our offerings. At our worship space at Trinity, we've always had two opportunities for our offerings: a wooden bowl for the programs and ministries of Trinity. And it's so critical at this time for us to meet the commitment that we made to continue to pay the dedicated folks who work with our children each week and our hourly staff, and to make our facilities available to Hope Food Pantry and Homeless Task Force. And we also have a woven basket for a special offering. And this week, it's for Out Youth Austin. For 30 years, Out Youth Austin has been a safe place for youth of all sexual orientations and gender identities to be themselves. Located near Trinity on East 49th Street, just a block off of Airport Boulevard, Out Youth offers multiple programs, such as a drop-in center and a connection to LGBTQ support services, and a lending library, and individual and group counseling, and transgender awareness, support for families, and health and safer sex training. Out Youth is a true treasure in our community, and we want to do all we can to support this life-saving work. Now, there are several methods which you can use to give to Trinity today. You can visit our website at www.trinitychurchofaustin.org, and then click the Support tab and scroll down that page to see the options there. You can download the Give Plus mobile app from either iTunes or Google Play, and you may also text your offering to 512-967-0292 and add the keyword SPECIAL to support Out Youth Austin. And if you want to give to both the special offering and the general fund, send two texts, one with the keyword SPECIAL and one without. Please bring your most generous offerings to Trinity today.
Trinity. We've got a few highlights before we close out the service today. I want to let you know that I'm about to wrap up my semester at the seminary, and I'll be working with the church still through the summer and then doing the internship again for credit in the fall. So those are my plans for the near term, and I plan to graduate next May. Then we've got a few announcements here. First, you can, as always, you can reach out for Pastoral Care. Sid's cell phone is down in the description, or you can email directly pastoralcare@trinitychurchofaustin.org. Hope Food Pantry is still doing great work out of our church. You can donate to them directly at their website, hopefoodpantryaustin.org, or our website /support. Every Thursday at 10:30, there's a virtual coffee with Sid on a Google Hangout. You can contact, that's Thursday at 10:30 a.m., and you can contact office at Trinity Church of Austin via email for more information, including the link. We'll also be offering this coming Wednesday a psychological first aid for COVID-19 class from the American Red Cross. It'll be a brief online video with group discussion led by our own Paula Bowles, who is a licensed clinical social worker. And for more information about that, that will be this Wednesday, May 20th at 8 p.m. And you can email office at trinitychurchofaustin.org to register. And finally, there's going to be a virtual church-wide meeting to update on what all our plans are for the future. And that's going to be Sunday, May 31st from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. And the link will be in the email update for that week. That's all I've got. I'll hand it over to Sid.
And now may the peace of God go with us. May the power of God sustain us. And may the love of God keep us together forever. Amen.